Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe. Hello, everybody. We have Ross Simmonds joining us, who's going to help us learn a lot more about content distribution, which is, I think, is probably testified to that afterwards, Ross, that it's probably an undervalued discipline compared to all the efforts that go into creating content. I know we spend most of our time on that first part of it, but before jumping into all this, Ross, kind of what would be the 1 minute intro to who you are and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Definitely. I'm Ross. I'm a digital marketing strategist and entrepreneur. I run a company called Foundation Marketing. We work with some of the most ambitious brands in B2B SaaS, developing their content strategies as well as executing those content strategies with a fully remote team. And we get the chance to do some pretty cool work with companies like Canva, Unbounce, etc. over the years. And it's been a fun journey and a fun ride. And we love just working in B2B SaaS, influencing pipeline on the back of content.
Super nice. What would be the typical projects you would be hired to help these companies out with?
So it's a very connected to the episode in this combo that we're having. So a lot of brands over the years have struggled with a simple concept, and that is distribution. They've invested a ton of time and energy creating content. They write blog posts, they create ebooks, they create white papers, they create case studies, they develop all of these great assets that when they are in the arms of their ideal customer, they're in the eyes of their ICP, they actually drive results for the business. Those pieces sometimes stagnate. They sometimes start to decay. They no longer rank. They no longer generate traffic, or they become completely just collecting dust because their sales team no longer promotes it. What we do is we come in, we identify, we do an audit, we review their content assets, and then we identify distribution tactics and techniques that they can use to distribute and spread those stories. So we'll take old blog posts, we'll repurpose them, we'll take podcasts, we'll repurpose them, we'll take ebooks, we'll turn them into social content that they can share on LinkedIn. We take all of those existing assets and start to repurpose and repackage them so those clients are able to constantly show up in front of their audience with highly relevant and engaging content. We also optimize old content, so content that might have been published in 2020 that was making references to things happening at that time. We would go back, update those pieces to current date with new relevant information, stats, etc., and are running that engine for our partners. So long story getting a little bit longer around what we do for our partners. It's essentially the full suite of content marketing. And we really have this belief that it comes down to, like, instead of just being so focused on creating, that it's important that we think about distribution, research, optimization, all of those other elements of it, because the whole content marketing industry in many ways has fallen victim into thinking that it's just about content when it's actually content marketing. So focus on the full suite.
Cool. Yeah, I think that you really put the finger on a classic problem for all of us who does content. And just for anybody who's listening in here, feel free to join the conversation through the chat. Then we can bring up the questions to Ross as we
Sorry, I get excited when I talk about distribution and
not bad. So where should we start, Ross? Kind of what is the maybe if we start by thinking about diagnosing your company when you start looking at a potential client, how do you kind of do that flyover scan of where's the potential? Is it looking at existing stuff, or is it looking at the market, what's all possible, or what is kind of the entry level you do?
Yeah, so the way we like to think about it is like content market fit as a concept. So the same way that there's product market fit, we believe that there's content market fit. And what you need to do is do some research up front to understand what stories are going to actually resonate with your audience. And the way that you do that is twofold. Either you can use third-party information to understand it, or you can actually get firsthand information by actually diving into conversations with your audience, the customers, the people you're trying to serve. or reviewing transcripts from sales, reviewing the actual gong recordings, whatever it might be that you use, listening to those to understand what are pain points that you're hearing often, looking at reviews on G2 around problems that people are having, looking at competitors' reviews. We dive into all of this stuff. Then once you have all of this information, you should be able to pull away a few key insights around the types of stories that your audience cares about when they're making a decision associated with your product. So you start to see that these are certain questions that are showing up frequently, or you start to see that these are certain types of content that generate a ton of traction within a community. Let's say, for example, I'm targeting developers and I'm talking to these individuals. I'll go into a channel like Hacker News. I'll sort the content for top posts, but I will use a keyword that is relevant to my ICP. Let's say, for example, I'm talking to developers who work in the SMS space. I might just type in SMS protocols, SMS development, blah, 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 something that is relevant to that niche. Sort the content by top posts, identify pain points and problems that people talk about often in this space. Now I have content market fit in the sense that I know a few themes that this audience cares about. Once I have that, I then have to understand where my ICP is spending time. So I now have channel, I have content user fit. I know what type of content my users want. Now I need to understand where my audience is actually spending time. So if I create content like that, I can go there. So then
just to break you, I think you said so many good things already there.
Yeah, no worries.
I think what struck me is kind of, we've been collecting reviews on G2, but we haven't, once in a while we browse through what people write, but we tend to forget that this is real people writing stuff.
Right.
So I think just wanted to put a note there for everybody listening. If you're collecting reviews anywhere, and you're doing content, make sure you write them and try to synthesize value out of them.
One powerful thing with G2 that we've done is you scrape all of your reviews, run an n-gram analysis around how many times do 4 or 3 word combinations show up in that text, and you'll start to see trends. So and then what you can also do now with ChatGPT is run an analysis across that analysis of saying things that sound like this, and then you're able to see what are the sentiments that are oftentimes being said. Using this research, we've done it against brands' competitors, and it has allowed us to get insights into these are the types of things that people hate about this product. Let's use this messaging in the content that we create, in the stories that we put out, in the landing pages that we write. So you're able to combat things that real people are saying directly in the copy and in the content. So that's essentially the research part of the process. And then once you have done the research to understand the way that your audience thinks, figure out where they're spending time, and start distributing those stories on those specific channels. So if you know your audience is in Hacker News, you're going to go into Hacker News and you're going to submit the content. But before you do that, you have to study Hacker News to understand how they like to consume content, because you don't want to get blocked. You don't want to get same thing in a Slack community and a forum, etc. You need to understand the spaces you're on. It could even be LinkedIn. Certain types of content does well on LinkedIn. Certain type of content does well on Twitter. You figure out where your audience is, and then you apply your strategy to that and share your content on those channels appropriately.
I think that's really good stuff. Just trying to write mental notes for myself.
No worries.
I think one thing where a good example of Hacker News, I tried a few times. I tried doing stuff on Reddit as well, and I know it's big, but I also know it's a community I don't follow, so I can't kind of get that feel of how is it that you post stuff here. Am I too old to write stuff here?
It's a great call out. A lot of people struggle with that. You're not alone, and I think I've cracked the code on Reddit. I can go on Reddit tomorrow and I can get on the front page with relative confidence. But the thing that I do that's different is you have to understand that you have to do that research up front. So every subreddit is going to be different. Every subreddit covers a different topic, and every subreddit has its own culture, community, and they have their own expectations, and the things that they talk about, the way that they want content is different. And what you need to do is study that. The way that I do it is I go into these subreddits. I sort the content by top posts. When you sort it by top post, you're going to start to identify the formats that are most frequent, the topics that are the most frequent, and the style of the content that is most frequent. When you see this, you should be able to gauge what type of content you can distribute into these communities. So for example, if I'm going into a subreddit like Our Entrepreneur, which is dedicated to entrepreneurs who talk about their business. A few things that you will immediately see is that they love text-driven posts. So in that subreddit, if you're going to try to generate traction, you need to go into that community with a text-driven post. It's not going to be a link. It's just going to be a lot of text. You're essentially writing a blog post in that community. The second thing you'll notice is that they love transparency. They want to see numbers. They want to see screenshots of your Stripe account, of your PayPal account. They want you to bear it all. So if you're not comfortable sharing the details, the specifics, you're probably not going to get a lot of traction on our entrepreneur, because they want to see exactly what happens beneath the surface. So you want to embrace those types of first principles. When you do that, you submit it to the community with confidence, you will be able to generate results on the back.
There's a short snippet that we should be distributing afterwards.
That's it. Exactly.
How do you do this kind of really agree about this, like studying where people are? Kind of what would be the textbook approach to, like, you get a new customer. What is the process to figuring out where is it that we need to be distributing?
So it starts with a conversation with the client. So when we are taking on a new partner at Foundation, we actually set off with a kickoff. And during that kickoff, we're asking a ton of questions. We have a questionnaire that they fill out to ensure that we're informed. We understand their ICP. And then we start asking questions about what we've learned from our preliminary research that we would do, where we're taking data from tools like SparkToro to understand what podcasts they listen to. We're taking data from things like audience with an S to better understand what other accounts their audience might be following. We start to then use tools like BuzzSumo to understand what content is generating traction amongst these subcultures in these communities. Then we use things like Twitter search to actually do research around keywords to see what phrases and what topics went viral. We use all of this work up front that we call essentially our strategy and research phase to understand channel user fit, content user fit, and then we start to actually create and distribute the content that we've identified. We do an on-site audit of their existing pieces. All of these things take place over the course of about 2 months up front, and then we move into the execution phase.
Wow. Just curious. I've been following Rand Fishkin since he did the Whiteboard Fridays. But how does that tool work? SparkToro. I've only briefly looked at the website.
So SparkToro is a great tool. It's one of our favorite tools in our toolkit that gives you the ability to better understand the behaviors of the people within a certain group or culture. So for example, if I'm trying to connect with people who have a deep interest in the Philadelphia Eagles, I can take the Philadelphia Eagles social accounts, plug them into SparkToro. They do an analysis of their followers and will tell me the different things that people who follow that team might be interested in. I could do the same thing for Dream Data. I could submit your account and then within the matter of seconds know the people who follow Dream Data are interested in these different topics. They listen to these podcasts, they follow these subreddits, and they're actually subscribed to these newsletters. Why is that information possible and valuable? Because you can now use that to inform the podcast that you sponsor, the podcast that you conduct outreach to try to become a guest on, and then you go from there. For me, it's kind of like a perfect example is this. You folks connect with B2B minds. Our company service big B2B minds. For me to do research on Dream Data and understand that the people who listen to this podcast are going to be my ICP is valuable insight. So SparkToro is a great shortcut for getting insight into whether or not you should take an opportunity, whether a partnership is there. The opportunities are truly endless. It's a great tool. Strongly recommend it.
Super nice. Okay, it makes a lot of sense. Just going back to the list, the first one is, what was the first one?
Content user fit. So do the research up front,
and then the
understand the channel.
And then is there another step then once you figured out the different kind of channel options?
So after you figured out the channel options, you now need to create good content. And there's 4 types of content that I believe are good content across the board. If a piece of content that you're developing doesn't fall into these categories, it's probably not a piece of content you should create. Content that either educates people, engages people, empowers people, or entertains people. If you can do all 4, then you're going to win a Grammy and you're going to be amazing. But just having content that educates people, engages, entertains, or empowers is key. When I say educate, oftentimes people think I'm always talking about I have to be an academic and create this very formal document. engagement. It doesn't need to be that, right? Like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis with these podcasts is educational content. So this is an example of educational content.
Yeah.
Engaging content is when you put up a post and you're asking for advice, you're looking for feedback, you're looking for suggestions. What did I miss? You'll see a lot of these types of assets on Twitter generate tons of traction, or the site formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. But like you would see a lot of people putting up these posts and people responding. That's engagement-driven content. Empowering content is when you see a brand create a piece that are like the 10 people that you must follow in a certain niche, or these are the 5 X, Y, and Z industry or companies that you need to follow in 2025, whatever it might be. You're empowering other people. It's also ego bait. So those brands are going to like, they're going to share, it reaches their audience, and now you have additional traction. The final type is entertaining, which is arguably the most difficult, especially in B2B, because a lot of times in B2B industries and B2B spaces, people kind of view it as a very professional setting. It doesn't always have to be knee-slapping hilarity and fun and humor. It could just be a meme. It could be poking fun at a problem that everyone in your industry has. Entertaining content falls into that category. So long story, getting a little bit longer again, educate, engage, entertain, and empower, create content that falls into that bucket. And then the next step is to distribute it across all those channels that you did research on.
Yeah, like speaking of the entertain, my colleague Sam was the guy who created this meme with the cheerleader and then the 42 marketing touches and deal closed. And you've probably seen it.
I did see that.
He like, it's just been stolen, which is the purpose of memes, but it's probably been seen by millions of people. Yeah. But it does also actually express that we understand the world of a B2B marketer, that you do a ton of stuff that never gets measured, and then there's the salesperson that just closes the deal. So we've definitely seen like using memes a way of expressing we know the industry, but we also can create something that is somewhat entertaining.
I love it. I love it. That's the coolest part about the space, right? Like for probably a few years ago, everyone was like, oh no, our brand can't touch memes. That's outside of our brand guidelines. That's outside of our brand rules and regulations kind of thing. But today, I think more and more organizations are starting to realize that the internet culture is real, and the way that people communicate on the internet is different than it was 10, 15 years ago. And memes are a form of communication. They're a form of spreading stories, spreading messages across a wide range of different cultures. And even within a subculture as geeky and technical as B2B attribution and revenue attribution, meme can do wonders. So I think people really need to, in many ways, get over the fear of memes and embrace them more.
If something goes somewhat viral, it's also the validation that here's a good piece of content. So I've been taking the best of the memes and then putting into ads and then putting them in front of cold audiences. So here's the thing that is validated already. It should also work if we then pay for it to put it in front of the people we think is our ICP.
I love that. I think that's a meme is a great shortcut to identifying content market fit. And what I mean by that is if a story resonates from a meme level and it generates a lot of traction, there's probably some legs there that you can double down on and start to recreate new formats of content in a similar vein that talk to that same idea. So those memes that have generated a ton of traction could also turn into blog posts on the same topic. The meme could be the social sharing image. It could also be a Twitter thread. It could be a LinkedIn update. It could be a webinar. It could be an entire video series. There are so much legs that a viral piece should give a brand, but oftentimes doesn't. Most brands will see that viral hit and they'll say, that was it, we got lucky. But instead, what they should do is double down. They should double down on that idea, double down on that insight, and start to create more and more pieces that rotate around that story and theme that took off and resonated with so many people.
Yeah, spot on. Let's return to the chronology afterwards, but I just want to ask you, which social platforms are you biggest on right now? And is it shifting towards others, or like what does that landscape look for you personally?
Yeah. So across the board, B2B is our focus. LinkedIn is still the GOAT when it comes to B2B. LinkedIn is a great channel for driving sales, for driving pipeline, for driving revenue. We're seeing tons of traction there. X, when it comes to tech and selling to technical founders, technical leaders, is still a very valuable channel as well. We see a lot of value in leveraging X as a channel for creating content, distributing content, repackaging content, and so on and so forth. Now, here's one that is a sleeping giant that everyone should know and does know, but very rarely do I see it being leveraged very well, and that's YouTube. YouTube is the second most popular search engine in the world. It happens to be owned by the first most popular search engine in the world. So they're kind of in cahoots, but for some reason, a lot of people ignore YouTube as a distribution channel. That webinar, that podcast, that clip that you recorded should all be uploaded to YouTube, long form, but also short form with different clips uploaded to shorts. Optimize those descriptions, optimize those titles, make sure that they have captions, make sure that they have some good cuts, upload that content, and you can do some significant numbers there. There is a major underinvestment in YouTube within the B2B space, and the brands today that make the investment to understand it are going to capitalize on it in the future, because we as humans spend much less time wanting to read content and way more time wanting to watch content. So if we can create more video content, I think brands that invest now are going to be generating significant dividends in the future, because the next generation doesn't want to read your 5,000 posts. They want to just watch a tutorial on YouTube that's going to show them how to do something.
I think that is that may be a good intersection into, like, we've been distributing on YouTube for like a little bit less than a year now, and it's like, to be honest, it's like we're not really seeing the exponential growth there, but completely agree with what you say, that it should be the right channel. So how do you justify efforts? And it's like, it's just a hard channel to understand the impact of, because they don't expose this user level data, and you don't necessarily have links going left and right to all your sub pages. So what is probably the discussion one should have with yourself about should we keep trying, or when do we know we're on the right path, or how would you advise a client on this, Russ?
Right. So resources are a key part of it. Like, you first and foremost have to start with understanding your resources and whether or not the resources that you're investing into the channel are appropriate to the opportunity that exists. And the way that you assess that on YouTube, in my opinion, is a blend of SEO research. So you need to start by understanding what are high value keywords associated to your industry and your space. What is the volume that is happening within YouTube to actually see how many people are looking for topics like this in our space.
How do you get volume in YouTube? Just to, sorry to interrupt.
So one of the tools is Keywords Everywhere. It's a great tool. You can also use vidIQ, great tool. These tools will tell you what the search volume is within YouTube around certain keywords. You then use that data to identify the total addressable market for different keywords within YouTube. Once you have that information, you can validate the data against actual YouTube videos that are ranking for those keywords. So if I'm going after B2B revenue attribution, that's a keyword. It's probably got relatively low volume. Let's say it has 1,000 searches, 500 searches a month, and that's probably being generous. But let's say it has those. How many views does the #1 ranking video have for that? It's probably got a lot of long tail keywords that are going to it. Possibly has some ads going to it. You can use vidIQ to see what the breakdown of their views are ad based versus organic. You then use that to better understand whether or not there's an opportunity to recreate this video. If that date on that video was 2019, then, oh my goodness, goldmine, go create a 2023 version and make it relevant and timely. Then you can start to capture that traffic. You do that across the board, you're able to set yourself up for success. The other thing that people don't do is they don't audit and actually have a real conversation with themselves about whether or not their content is good or whether or not their content is bad. So you should do an actual review to say, okay, are we better than what's already showing up in the SERP within YouTube? Is our content quality where it needs to be? If the answer to that is yes, great, keep going. If it's no, it might be time to rethink your actual content strategy and how you're creating content. Your thumbnail is very important. Optimizing all of your thumbnails across the board to actually be click friendly is important. So making sure that you do that is also key. We've done that for brands where we actually go through all of their past YouTube videos, we update their their actual thumbnails to be more click friendly, and we take screenshots from their content, optimize them, rewrite their descriptions, making them SEO optimized, links within their description going back to their website, all of these things.
Brilliant.
So I know that was a long tangent again, but essentially within YouTube, the way that you start is by doing an analysis of what you've done, comparing that with the opportunity that exists, making the changes and adjustments, stretching that out to say, okay, how long are we willing to tinker and experiment with this? Do we have runway to experiment with 6 months? Do we see the needle moving? If you do, great, continue to invest and you'll be off into the races. So that's the way that we approach it typically at Foundation.
Brilliant.
And I think that's the approach that smart brands should be looking at YouTube.
Yeah, Ross, I'll just pull this up to give you some credit here, but B says that I'm so glad I joined this. Ross Simmonds, this is a gold mine. And I think this is probably the best explanation I've heard about how to go to YouTube before. So great job there, Ross.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So we jumped off the course when we were at the creating content, the Spark Tour, all that kind of thing. So now we're putting out content. Is there anything after that, or how do you see it?
Yeah. So now we're putting out content. You've written a blog post, you're creating webinars, you're creating ebooks, you're creating podcasts, whatever it might be, you're creating these assets. The next step is to actually distribute these assets in the channels that make sense to you. Now, again, it's going to depend from one organization to the next, but you want to have someone who owns the distribution process and is in charge of ensuring that assets get distributed, or you work with a great company like Foundation and we'll do it for you. But essentially what you're going to, shameless plug, but essentially what you want to do is you take that webinar, let's say you launch it, it goes live. After it goes live, you need to have a process in place that outlines the predefined ways in which that asset is going to be distributed. It's going to go live as a blog post. Okay, within that blog post, we're also going to have a CTA telling people that if they want to rewatch it, they can go to this link, submit their email, and then they go into your MQLs or leads. They can go into your form. In addition to that, you now want to promote that blog post. So you're going to tweet that blog post, you're going to share it on LinkedIn, etc. In the same time, while this is happening, it's probably been about 48 hours after the webinar went live, you're listening to that webinar and you're trying to find key moments where the person on the webinar educated, engaged, entertained, or empowered the audience in some way. Find those key moments and chop them up. You're going to chop them up into short social clips. You're going to have them formatted for both vertical and horizontal. And then you're going to distribute those on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Quora, whatever channels make sense to you. YouTube Shorts, you're going to upload them there. Once those assets are distributed, you're going to make sure that you're also having a CTA throughout, telling people where they could get that webinar so they can go back to it. Now, at this point, you're probably already feeling a little bit exhausted, but early on, you should have done some research to understand what communities your audience is spending time on. You then are going to take that blog post and you're going to take that blog post and you're going to start to submit it into those communities, but you're not going to do it in a spammy way. You're going to do it in a way that makes it seem like you're adding value to the community. Hey, folks, I got so much value out of this community over the last few months. I wanted to share with you a webinar that we just hosted at Dream Data that I think you're going to get a ton of value in. I know that you get a lot of these links, but let me give you a few insights around what we talk about, and you give it to them there so they don't have to actually click on it. Then at the bottom of that piece, you say, if you're interested in learning more, check out this link. So by adding context in the post immediately, you're not as likely to get marked as spam. You're going to be seen as a value giver. You're giving people value. Great. While all of this is happening, your sales team should also have that blog post or that webinar in their signature. So when they're sending off an email that it says, P.S. Did you just hear that our CEO was on this webinar with so-and-so? Check it out. There's a message gone out to Slack that says, hey, everybody on our team, like this update that our company's page just shared. People start to like it. They start to comment on it. That can be set up in a Zapier where you just like, if something gets published, it goes up in your promotions Slack channel, and then everybody starts to like and engage. At this point, if you're not already exhausted, then you start to say, okay, how can I share this on my own account? Maybe I'll record a quick video and share that with my personal audience on LinkedIn to let them know that this has gone live and I think they're going to love it. You amplify it, you promote it, and then you go with there. And then if that's not enough for you, then you go and find a few questions in Quora that are asking that exact same question. You answer those questions in Quora with a link to the webinar, and then you call it a day. Go get some champagne and pop it.
That's really, really, really great, Ross. And on the Foundation blog, is there a content distribution checklist or anything like that?
We do, yeah. So there is a content distribution checklist. If you go to Google and type in foundation content distribution checklist, it should show up. Or if you go to rosssimmons.com/distro checklist, I believe that is
still. We'll make sure to find it and put them up afterwards. At least that's
exactly.
super helpful.
Yeah, and anyone can reach out to me, and I'll be sure to send it over to you. Feel free to flip me a note on LinkedIn. Just let me know where you heard it, and I'll get it over to you.
Yeah. Have we come to the end of the Ross Simmonds playbook, or is there after the distribution part? Is there another layer to
There's one more step.
Let's do it.
So after the distribution is done, you have to optimize the content, because time is the one thing that we're always all going to be up against. So great, you distributed it, you promoted it. 3 months later, you're still promoting it. 6 months later, you're still promoting it. 12 months later, you're still promoting it. But things have changed in the industry. Now you need to be having a system in place for optimization and maintenance. So that blog post that you wrote, where you're referencing the person who worked at a certain company and a stat that they shared about that moment in that time, you need to update that piece. You also want to understand, okay, this piece is getting a handful of backlinks with this keyword. Why don't we start to update the title of this piece to actually reflect that keyword, because it wasn't optimized correctly. We went off of something that they talked about that wasn't actually relevant. So let's change the title. Let's update that. And by doing so, maybe we'll be able to capture some space in the SERP around this topic. So you start to optimize your pieces based off of that. You then are also looking at, let's say you had a YouTube video that launched 6 months later, and it's on this same topic. You embed that YouTube video in that piece that you created 12 months ago, 6 months ago. So now that YouTube video is starting to get traffic. This is a cheat code that a lot of brands don't really see when it comes to their launch of YouTube. If you've created a YouTube video that is on a topic that you've already written in the past on your blog, and that blog post is generating a bunch of traffic, a cheat code to accelerating the actual view count on that video is to embed it in that old blog post, because that blog post is already ranking in the SERP. It's already generating traffic. Let's capitalize on that value and drive it to another channel. So the optimization process happens long-term. The distribution process happens long-term. And when you do that, you shift your mindset of just create to a mindset around creating once, distributing, and optimizing forever.
I think there's one thing I want to go in there. So you said, like, you take the YouTube, put it into a blog post. I get the SEO component, that the longer time people spend on that page consuming that piece of content, hopefully the better it ranks. But you also talked about the view count of the YouTube video. Is there some view count related stuff in terms of how it ranks in YouTube as well?
It is. So the more views that a piece gets, the more likely it's going to rank. If the time spent watching it is higher, then it's going to rank even better. But what I have seen from experience is, like, a lot of people now more than ever want to see video content. And if you can embed it within your blog post and save them the time from reading, and they can just watch it, or they'll press play, move the browser over to the left and do their work in another browser in a tab. You still get the whole view, but they're just listening. They're not watching you. That's a good experience for the user and for Google and for YouTube. So it's a easy way to essentially kill two birds with one stone.
Super brilliant, Ross. I think there's I feel so bad because there's so many things we could do better than what we're doing today. Is there any kind of advice you feel that on this topic you feel like you could give as well, Ross? Or have we been around?
I will. And it's going to stem exactly from what you said around, like, you feel so bad. Like, you don't feel bad. That's the first piece, because a lot of marketers, a lot of leaders, a lot of organizations make the mistake of completely changing their strategy on the whim after hearing someone talk on a podcast or a webinar around a different tactic. And what I want to encourage all of the listeners to do is to take a pause and take a break before you say, we need to be on Slack, we need to be on Reddit, we need to add a blog post to every salesperson's email signature. Before you do any of that, go back to fundamentals and start to understand where you are today, where your strengths are, where your resources are, and understand what is actually possible with what you have today. My dad always said an amazing quote. He said, it's better to have one good kid than two bad. And the same thinking needs to be applied to distribution. It is way better to be excellent and amazing on LinkedIn and milk that for all it's worth than to be mediocre on LinkedIn, mediocre on X, mediocre on YouTube, mediocre at SEO, mediocre on Medium. Horrible scenario to be in, because you're stretching your resources across all of these channels to just be mediocre, and you never stand out. So I would encourage people to understand your situation. Do the research into your current situation. If you need to outsource a certain channel to a partner, do it, embrace that model, but don't throw out what you've built from a brand equity lens or from a value lens just because of something new that you heard. So my advice to everyone is to take a step back, evaluate your scenario, and then be strategic in identifying where you go next versus trying to do all of the things at once. Because I get messages literally every month. Ross, I tried to be on Reddit. I tried to be on Medium. I tried to be on Quora. I tried to do all of these different things, and now I'm burnt out. What in the world? What did I do wrong? What you did wrong was you tried to do all the things. You can't do all the things unless you have $5 billion worth of market traction. Like you can't be excellent everywhere. You can't be excellent on TikTok, Reddit, Quora, Facebook, LinkedIn, Medium, all of these things unless you have ridiculous budgets. So my advice is truly to figure out a few good things that you can be excellent at, go all in, be excellent, and then move on to the next one. Or find a partner and let them be great for you on these various channels.
Super, super, super brilliant, Ross.
Thank you.
The last thing, if people want to speak more with you or your company or stuff like that, where should they head?
Yeah, the easiest would probably be on X or on LinkedIn. You can find me at Ross Simmonds or at The Coolest Cool. Would love to connect with you. I created my Twitter handle when I was in university, so don't judge me for that, but it's stuck, so I'm keeping it. But yeah, I'd love to connect with folks on all the different channels. If you add me to LinkedIn, though, please let me know that you heard me on the Dream Data podcast and our live show. I get way too many connections, but if you include that, I'll be sure to connect with you back, and we'll stay connected.
Brilliant, Ross. Thank you so much for joining. And we'll be sure to follow up on all these good advices.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's always a
man, Ross.
Take care. Cheers.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.